All right, welcome back to Patient Win Insider. I'm Nick Moen, and today I'm joined by Stephen Anderson, founder of Total Patient Service. Stephen spent nearly 4 decades working with dental practices around the world, helping them rethink the patient experience by shifting from a find and fix model to one built on trust, understanding, and what patients actually want. His work sits at the intersection of patient psychology, ethics, and long-term practice sustainability. Today, we're unpacking why most practices struggle with case acceptance and what truly patient-centered care looks like in a practice. So let's get into it. Thanks for coming on, Stephen.
Nick, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So you've been open about the fact that you're not a dentist, but you've
Very
influenced thousands of practices globally, right?
We've been doing this for a few minutes, for sure.
Yeah. Well, what allowed, without being a dentist, like what allowed you to get more of a bird's eye view of the profession itself without, being directly in it?
Yeah. Here's, I'll give you the current and then the back look. Our team at Total Patient Service specializes in one word, and that word is the word yes. So every point in the patient relationship that requires a yes, there's a system for that. So from the very first conversation to convert that lead to a scheduled appointment to a patient that'll actually show up, that's important today. We can talk about that. To then converting that scheduled appointment into an actual treatment plan, and then getting a yes to that treatment plan, and a yes to the financial arrangements, a yes to coming back. When you think about it, there are so many points in the whole patient relationship that require that one simple 3-letter word. And there's a whole science behind that. Here's the backstory. At our origin, we were working with all types of businesses all over the country. Nothing necessarily to do with dentistry, but just businesses in general. We had one of our clients who told his dentist about us and knew that his dentist was really into continuing education. This is a dentist who was, in terms of clinical education, was one of the finest dentists in the country. So he actually showed up to one of our courses. So it was a business course. We had people from all over the country, all different types of businesses. He kind of apologized for being there a little bit. He wasn't sure why he was there. He just came on good faith on a recommendation and went back. And 3 or 4 months later, he called back and he goes, man, we need to sit down and we need to talk. So he came back and he laid out what he had done with what he had learned and the results in his practice. He opened up his financials. He goes, this is where I started. This is where I am today. And he said, this stuff that you've taught me is magic. He said, I have never heard the word yes so many times from our patients. And he goes, not just to a restoration here, there, a crown this year and a crown next year, but he says, I'm talking about full mouth restorative dentistry. He goes, I'm getting yeses to comprehensive care. He said, first time in my career this has happened. And he goes, this right here is really all the connecting pieces. Later on, not too long after that, Dr. Pete Dawson, who many will recognize as really one of the greats in clinical education, has since passed away. But when he first was introduced to what we teach, he called it the missing link in dentistry. He said, this is the missing link between great clinical skills and patients who will accept treatment. You got to have this bridge. And so that's what we do. And that's what we've been doing ever since that first dentist introduced us to dentistry, and now have done that in thousands of practices all over the country. Just that one focus on that one word. And Nick, you and I talked about before the show a key difference. There's a big difference in doing things to get a patient to say yes versus creating the environment in which it makes it easier for them to accept comprehensive care. So this isn't about getting people to do something. This is about helping them make the right decision for their overall health, well-being, and appearance. So there's a big difference. So here's the key. Dentistry mistakenly, as an industry, adopted the scientific model or the scientific method as a business model. All right, so What's the scientific method? Well, the scientific method is you identify the problem, then you come up with a proposed solution that you think will solve that problem, you present it, and then you implement it. You do it. So that's the diagnose, treatment plan, present it, and execute it, which is great in science. That's what's taught in dental school. That's what you do in science. That's sound science. And it's not a business model. Okay. It's good in science, but it doesn't necessarily work as a overall business model because of how we are wired as people, is how we're wired in terms of how we make decisions. So we know based on science that we make decisions emotionally, and then we justify that emotional decision with logic. That's wired into us. It's the fight flight response. We have an immediate emotional response, and then we work to justify why we feel the way we do. Sometimes that is a subconscious reaction. Sometimes we're conscious of it, but that's how we're wired to make decisions. So when you think about it, dentistry is the opposite. So if you look at that sequence, emotion, then logic. But see, dentistry just goes straight to work on the logic, first and foremost. Here's the marketing proposition that patients, prospective patients, hear in the marketplace. This is basically how we translate it. The dentistry says to us, dentistry as an industry says, come on in the first time, and we're going to charge you up front to find problems you never knew you had.
Yeah.
And then we're going to work up a plan that is going to be so astronomically expensive you never thought you could spend this much money on it. And then you're going to get really excited about shelling out the money to solve all these incredible problems you didn't know you had. Who's going to sign up for that? Nobody is looking for more problems. Nobody in America woke up this morning. In fact, Nick, I don't think you woke up this morning and said, life's good. I don't have enough problems, and satisfaction in life comes from solving more problems. I'm going to go to my dentist so they can give me more problems to solve. Nobody did that.
Yeah.
Nobody does that no more than any dentist woke up this morning and said, all those patients coming in today thinking they're just coming in to get their teeth cleaned, and they got another thing coming. Nobody likes to be the bearer of bad news. There's no dentist that likes to be the one that has to tell patients things they don't want to hear, and patients don't want to hear bad news. They don't want any more problems. It's amazing anything ever gets done in dentistry. Dentists don't want to deliver bad news. Patients don't want bad news. How's all this going?
Right.
It's a disaster as a business. So the beautiful thing about it, so there's the challenge. Now, the beautiful thing about dentistry as a business, when you think about it, dentistry has become the number one leading healthcare segment in all of healthcare. So I'm going to give you a quick quiz. Nick, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Name me one position in healthcare, one specialty, whatever it is, that sees more of America more often for a greater quantity of time than we do in dentistry.
I mean, that's probably the one, right?
So when you think about it, dentistry sees patients at least once, so it sees 50 to 60% of America at least once a year, many times twice a year. And if we're doing our job on the perio front, 4 times a year. And at each of those visits, a full hour or more of conversation and FaceTime with the patient. Nobody in healthcare has that kind of quality interaction with their patients. Even if your patients are going to get their annual physical, you're lucky if you get 5 minutes with the physician, if you even see the physician at all. So dentistry is now uniquely positioned. We have more FaceTime with patients than anyone else in healthcare. We got to be better at this than everybody else. And so part of our mission at the TOPS Institute, we call it TOPS for short, Total Patient Service. Part of our mission is to make dentistry the number one segment in healthcare in terms of patient service. We get more practice, We had to crush this. We had to do it better, to the point that patients go to their physician, to everybody else in healthcare, and says, I wish you would treat me the way my dentist treats me, because they have it dialed in. So here's how to dial it in. If we align the practice model with how people naturally make decisions. So here's the natural part. Another quiz. You ready, Nick?
Yeah.
What's more powerful in terms of a motivator? What's more powerful, needs or wants? Beyond food, clothing, and shelter. We're going to take those off the shelf. Okay, we're going to assume that you got those bases covered. Beyond food, clothing, and shelter, what's a more powerful motivator, needs or wants?
Well, I mean, the wants coming from this emotional response, right?
100%. When was the last time you did something that you wanted to do at the sacrifice of something that you needed to do?
Well, that'd be
Oh,
insane,
last
wouldn't
night. Okay. Right? You do it all the time, right? So here's the key. The shift, the flip is, yes, the scientific model works, diagnose, treat, plan, present, in its right place, but it's not the front door. Right? If the first thing we say is you have to come in and you have to have the exam and you have all these things that are requirements to get in, that's not the most welcoming proposition in the world. You're still going to do it, but you do it when you frame it properly. So let's talk about this. Here's the key. People do what they want to do. So every day, patients call dental practices, and the most common question the potential new patients ask when they call a new practice, number one, most frequently asked question is, how much is a cleaning?
Right.
Now, the reason they ask that question is not because they're shopping as much as they don't know any other question to ask. Nobody ever calls a dental practice and says, yes, I'd like to schedule a complete and comprehensive examination, please. Nobody ever asks that, but that's the first thing we tell them they have to have. So here's the question. If someone calls and inquires about a cleaning or any procedure, if they inquire about anything, what do they want? So I'll ask you this, Nick. If somebody calls and asks how much is a cleaning, what do they want?
Well, they want information, right? I mean, they're trying to get some sort of expectations set before they come in, right?
Yeah. So here's the key is when you say, okay, what does this patient really want? If they called and asked about a cleaning, what do they want? Here's the appropriate answer. I don't know. I don't know what they want until I do what? Until I ask, right? Until I ask that person. And here's the key. This is one of the biggest challenges in dentistry, and it is so simple yet so commonly missed. Patients don't want procedures. They don't want a cleaning. They don't want a crown. They don't want a root canal. They don't want a partial. They don't want a bridge. They don't want an implant. In fact, there is nothing that dentistry does that anybody wants.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks for the invitation. So here's the key. If you're listening to this, if there were one key principle to take back to your team, it's this. Patients don't want procedures. They don't want procedures. They want, and this is common sense, but we violate it all the time, they want what the procedure will do for them. Yep. So, Nick, if you go get your teeth cleaned, which I assume you do, you work in dentistry, you're doing this all the time, you walk the talk, why do you go get your teeth cleaned on a regular basis? For you.
Well, it's maintenance, you know. Well, I mean, a couple of things. One, I'm thinking my future, right? So down the line, hopefully, if I invest now in preventative care, then I'll, invest less or have to invest less, in the future. And then because I'm
So number one is you do it to save money, right? Invest today, save tomorrow. Okay, why else?
I guess because I'm told to, right? The dentist says, "Hey, this is what you're supposed to do."
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
peace of mind that you're doing what the experts are telling you ought to do to stay healthy. Good. Okay, so here's the question. The mistake we make in dentistry, somebody says, how much is a cleaning? And we dive right into prices and appointment times. Well, the cleaning is XYZ. Do you have insurance? We talk about this procedure and the appointment and the pricing and the whole deal. And then the whole relationship gets started on prices and procedures.
Right.
That's the whole basis for the relationship. That's a great way to start.
No, not really.
Versus, what if the priority were people and what their priorities are? Okay, so let's shift. We're going to shift from patients, procedures, and prices to people and their priorities. So let me give you a quick example. You call Nick and you say, how much is a cleaning? Or I'd like to schedule a cleaning, whatever it is. But you make an inquiry about a procedure.
Sure.
So I'm going to say, Nick, thanks so much for calling. And I'm going to gather some information about how you heard about us, the whole deal. But here's one of my key questions. I'm going to say, so Nick, you called and asked about a cleaning. And I ask you this, for you, what is the most important thing to you about your first appointment in our office and getting your teeth cleaned? What's the most important thing to you?
But what do most people say? And that's a great question to ask.
So just exactly how you responded. Here you're going to say, well, it's doing what I ought to do because I've been told I ought to do this. Okay, so peace of mind, knowing that you're doing the right thing. And I want to make sure I invest today so I save tomorrow. I don't want any unnecessary surprises. I don't want problems down the road. So it's like, yeah, you want to prevent unpleasant and unnecessary things come down the road. So I'm going to feed that back to you. And I say, all right, so Nick, when you come into our practice, it sounds like our priority for you to accomplish your goals is you want to make sure you avoid unnecessary work down the road and that you have the peace of mind of knowing that you're doing everything you can to stay and be healthy. Am I right?
That's right.
All right. So when you come in, those are our top two priorities together. How does that sound?
Right. Sounds
Now,
great.
what just happened? That didn't take but maybe 60 seconds. And what just happened is we just flipped that entire conversation and the basis for our relationship. We flipped it from procedure and price to you're a real person who has priorities, and we are going to focus on your priorities. That's just the beginning, right? So I believe dentistry is a relationship business. When you think about it, it's a relationship business. We've got a better opportunity to build a relationship with people because of the ongoing nature and the quantity of time that we spend with people. We got a better opportunity to build a relationship. Every business has what I call an R factor, a relationship factor, the degree to which that the business depends upon relationships. Dentistry, huge R factor. Your local grocery store, not so much. I mean, you go there because it's convenient, the prices are fair, it's easy. Not a whole lot of R factor there. But your dentist, very, very high on the list. You know who the other one that's really high on the list, especially for the ladies? Your hairdresser. Huge R factor. Right? You got a relationship there. So one of the big areas of focus is, yes, clinically, we got to have it dialed in. That's the foundation. That's the entry point. That's your ethical responsibility, is to deliver great quality care. Got to do that. For the success of the practice, it's all based on the R factor. Right. So what are the things that you built into the process? You've got a process for clinical dentistry. You've got a process you follow to do a crown prep. For example, what's the process that you put in place in your practice to build high R factor so that you get what we call R&R, repeat and referral business? So here's an interesting data point. So everybody's familiar with NPS, Net Promoter Score. So Nick, you see this all the time. You've been bombarded with the NPS question. To what degree would you be willing to refer us to friends or family? You get that from all kinds of business, car dealers, and everybody's using NPS. So NPS was an invention of some guys at Bain Consulting, management consulting firm, that they determined that this was a metric that determine customer satisfaction. So everybody uses it now. Now, they've gone to NPS 2.0, which is now Net Promoter Score 2.0, now measures how much of your actual revenue comes from repeat and referral business. So now they're tracking revenue by customer to say, what was the source of this business? And is it repeat business? and is a referral business. Now, what we know based on one of the most recent surveys we helped back at the University of Massachusetts at Boston, 81% of respondents nationwide said that they prefer to choose their dentist based on the recommendation of a friend, a family member, or someone they trust. That hasn't changed in decades. Even with the advent of all things digital marketing, we still prefer, and here's the evidence of it. You ask a new patient. So Nick, if you called a practice for the first time and you said, how much is a cleaning, whatever, and they asked you, where did you hear about our practice? Overwhelmingly today, the response to that question is your online reviews.
Right.
Now, they didn't hear about you the first time from the online reviews, but that's the last place they checked before they decided to pick up the phone or before they made their first inquiry.
Yep.
So that's word of mouth. Online reviews are just one more form of word of mouth. Absent a close friend or family member's recommendation, we're all going to get online and we're going to see what other people, what the masses have said about this practice, because we all subconsciously subscribe to what I call the law of the herd. That's spelled H-E-R-D, as in that kind of herd, right? In other words, we follow the herd. It's called social proof. In social psychology and social economics, it's called social proof. So with lack of any hard data, I'm going to follow the herd. I'm going to see what everybody else is doing. And that's where I am going to tend to go, right? We all know this. This is no secret, right? But again, what does everybody else say? And then I'm going to do that. Then once I have that first interaction, there's the first patient service skill, is to convert that inquiry from a price and procedure conversation into a people and priority conversation. Now we've established the foundation for a long-term, high R factor patient relationship where, Nick, I'm helping Nick accomplish Nick's goals. Everywhere else you go in dentistry, you're coming in and we're telling you what to do.
Right.
Versus if you do it the right way, when you come into our practice, we're helping you get what you want.
Yep.
They're related, but it's a whole different approach and a whole different feel if I'm the patient. And it's a whole different feel if I'm the team. So if you're a dentist or a team member, and if you've ever had a day when you went home and you were spent, you were exhausted, right? You had nothing left in the tank. More often than not, it's because you've been pushing treatment all day long. You've been telling patients what they should do. You do the exam and then you say, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that. And you should on people all day long. And nobody likes to be shit on. It's exhausting when you're pushing all day long and you didn't sign up for that. Versus the days when you feel fulfilled, like you're making a difference, that everything works, are the days when you felt like you genuinely were helping people get something that they. So in explanation, it sounds simple. In practical application, there's a whole methodology, systems of verbal skills to make this work all the way through the practice so that you're creating the environment where it's easier for patients to say yes and they feel like you're genuinely helping them versus pushing treatment. Right. It was one of the reasons people hate going to the dentist. They say it all the time. Every time I go, they always find something new.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so let me give you can I use a car example?
Yeah.
I don't like using car examples in dentistry because I don't want to be equator, but let me give you the difference. Here's what I would say is the big difference. So I'm going to make a confession, Nick. I drive a Ford F-50 Raptor.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite things. One of the most awesome vehicles ever built. This thing was originally designed for the Baja California overland race